Today I want to discuss Roundhill and their latest ETF, which is WPAY. It's currently sitting at over $150 million of investor money, and growing more each day. And seeing this trend of predictable rookie investors chasing the latest craze, which is weekly paying investments, I want to provide a better explanation of what is really going on here. Full disclosure, I'm not a financial advisor, and my take is going to come from someone who does full-time day trading, along with having my financial advising Patsy. Right out the gate, with the advertisement of this product, I already see our first problem. They claim to provide a diversified exposure to your favorite single stocks, but just taking a look, 80% of this portfolio is in either tech or crypto stocks. It's like saying, look how diverse this litter of kittens is. I'm not saying that these are necessarily bad companies, but this much concentration into one sector as an investor, you have to be monitoring this. One downturn and that sector is going to cause you some serious headache. Since this ETF is built just tossing these single stock ETFs together, let's take a closer look at one of these and see how it works under the hood. Let's go with Apple. Okay, so we see that they've got a swap in here, they've got some money in bonds, and they're holding some shares. Let's kick it over to Professor Patsy and have her give us a general rundown of what swaps are.
All right, listen closely, my little retail rodents. You're over here on the left, pouring your hard-earned cash straight into Roundhill's bowl. Roundhill, now sitting pretty with a mountain of big boy money, doesn't waste time with your pretty call options. Oh no, they trot over to a nice bank manager, bat their eyelashes, and borrow about 100,000 shares for a fee, naturally. If those shares go up, the bank wires Roundhill the profit. If they go down, the bank sends Roundhill the bill. And Roundhill, being the general's middle cat she is, forwards the bank straight to you. Of course, before any of that reaches your poor little portfolio, Roundhill takes her 1% management fee because she deserves it. Finally, whatever scraps remain are dressed up as stock profits, bond yield, or my personal favorite, return of capital, which is just your own money making a grand re-entrance. Now, hush. Professor Patsy needs her nap. Royal minds require rest.
This begs the question then, was it worth it for these buyers of this single stock ETF? And when you run the numbers, we'll assume the best case scenario that you're being as aggressive as possible and just reinvesting all these weekly dividends. Well, in this case, they fell behind. It turns out that these investors were better off just buying the shares of Apple. And we could say, hey, maybe this is a one-off and all these other ones are performing significantly better. However, when we go through them, we've got one that is performing amazingly. We've got another 3 that are doing slightly better. And then the other 11 are just falling behind. Going over the numbers, I've got it calculated that Roundhill is siphoning off roughly $10 million of investor money via these single stock ETFs annually. They advertise this 120% exposure to moves, but all that really means is that if the stock moves up by 5%, well, you're making an additional 1%. However, the inverse is also true. If it drops by 5, you're going to lose an additional 1%. And in both cases, Roundhill is going to siphon off their cut. So they're honestly indifferent on how these things perform because they get paid regardless. I honestly think the best part is that they say this fund is actively managed. Like, you're telling me this guy has to look at one singular stock and he's still somehow performing worse than just buying and holding? And you're paying him a fee for this? This is beyond goofy. Individually, these aren't buy and hold investments, in my opinion. Holding these long term will ultimately have you underperform the underlying asset. The only ones who should be buying this is somebody who believes that this stock is about to go on an explosive bull run like Hood has in the past few months, and wants that little bit of additional exposure while also donating 1% to the fund managers. Timing is incredibly important with these, and if you know something's about to go on an explosive bull run, well then why wouldn't you leverage up and not be doing just a little 20% more? The expense ratio is absolutely absurd when it comes to WPAY. They're charging you that same 1% fee for putting these 15 stocks in a basket together, while also saying this fund is not actively managed. Their manager is going to come in once a month and rebalance these 15 stocks into equal-sized amounts. And for that, they're going to make about $1.5 million annually. Imagine being on an airplane and the pilot only shows up once a month and gets paid roughly $125,000 for that one day of work. That's what you're paying for when you buy into this thing. As I've shown you, if the majority of these things are underperforming, just buying the stock and holding it, tossing them all into a basket together won't change that fact. And for this simple act of grouping these products together, they intend to charge you an additional fee on top of that 1%, which they're generously waiving for 1 year, or until they change their mind and want some more money. Chasing these weekly payouts is rather silly. Just buy some additional shares of the stocks you like, and then sell those additional shares after it moves up a bit. You can shower the money over yourself and call it a dividend if that's really your kink. But paying Roundhill to watch is beyond silly and cutting into your gains for no reason. Those are my thoughts on this. Let me know your take in the comments.